Hi, I'm Yinka, and this is The Hurt Locker, a podcast where we open a door into men's mental health. Come and go.
That time around before I was diagnosed with ADHD, feeling like it's impossible to kind of like clamber out, and sometimes feeling like emotionless in a way. And that's the pain. The pain is like not even really feeling anything, no joy, no sadness, no nothing. And I've been in that place so many times throughout my life, considering would I be better off or would the world be better off without me here? Because this pain is so intense that I don't know what to do with it.
How did you get through? You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens the door on men's mental health. And tonight's guest, we have Matthew Menzies. Matthew, welcome to The Hurt Locker.
Pleasure to be here, Yinka. Thanks for having me.
Nice one, nice one. And how are you today?
Good. Today's a good day, yeah. Today's a good day. After some struggled days, some darker days, but today's a good one. Yeah, this week is positive.
Okay. And we'll touch on that in a bit. For the benefit of our listeners, who is Matthew Menzies?
Who am I? I am a father. I'm a brother, a son, a friend. Who I am in those roles is interesting. I'm kind of someone who is loyal, who kind of places a lot of value on respect and integrity. I'd say that's more the who of who I am to the people that kind of know me.
Okay. And interesting for the people who do know you, what 3 characteristics would they pick out about you?
Characteristics. Resilient, determined, and dependable.
Resilient, determined, dependable. Okay. Okay. So it's good to have you on the Hurt Locker. Tell us a little bit about what you do, because I know you've got the ADHD Remapped. Tell us a little bit about that. And does this tie into a discovery of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm an ADHD coach. I formed ADHD Remapped at the start of last year. So I kind of work with adults that have ADHD to kind of find like emotional balance, to discover a sense of purpose. And we work heavily on developing like executive function skills. So that's things like planning and organization, developing like structure and routine in your life. We work to kind of help people discover a more kind of confident and capable version of themselves. That's always been there, but that is just hidden behind such a strong like negative bias that we have as men, but particularly as ADHD men. And then we use this kind of new version or this new view of themselves to pursue the life goals with kind of real like intention and direction. And the reason I got into it is the very kind of reason you asked at the end of the question, like kind of where that comes from is nearly 5 years ago, I was undiagnosed and just going through the process of exploring an ADHD diagnosis and in a dark place. Like, I was kind of 2 years into being a new father, struggling as a parent, struggling in life, struggling with work, in a dark place, and was diagnosed and just kind of at 39 and had no idea what to do, how to get out of that hole. Reflecting on 39 years of like, what if I'd have known sooner? Would I have kept that job? Would I have completed that course? Would I have kept that friendship? Would I have maintained that relationship? Like all these kind of like questions and struggles. And going through the coaching process myself, I was able to just discover so much about myself, and that although I had this kind of fixation on all the things that I'd struggled with in life, I had so many successes that I already had to use as evidence for getting through every struggle that I kind of approached. It's just my attention, my focus was always on the struggle and the negative. I'd forgotten all the kind of good things and the strengths that I had.
Matthew, can I ask just to go back in terms of layman's terms? It's bandied about autism and ADHD all over the place. What is ADHD?
Yeah, so it's classed as a developmental disorder. So kind of in younger people, it tends to show us like a developmental delay of around like 30%. And that's around kind of like, not intelligence as in like kind of, but more around like social capacity and social development, how it impacts people day to day. So I mentioned the term executive functions, and that's things like emotional control, planning, organization, understanding kind of like time concepts and time perception, various things around kind of like day-to-day functional skills. And they're the things that we can struggle with a lot. They then have a big impact on things like our view of ourselves. So being told our whole life because we've struggled that we're not trying hard enough and we're not good enough, then that brings all of these emotional kind of complexities as well.
Can I ask, growing up, primarily I'm thinking about school time. How was it for you? Were you classed as a naughty child?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was. Interestingly enough, midway through my adult kind of career, like I became a teacher. So I taught for 5 years, and I always joked with the kids then and with myself as well. Like, if I'd have gone back to any of my teachers in school and told them that I became a teacher, they'd be absolutely shocked. Like, I was the kid that was kind of just disruptive, that was always getting in trouble, was, just constantly kind of outside head teacher's office, kind of getting a talking to, suspended, skipping school, like truanting. But that's from the outside looking in. Like, from the inside, particularly in high school, I really struggled. So struggled socially. I struggled feeling like I was just constantly feeling like I was not good enough, like walking up the school path to approach the school doors, just thinking like, what am I going to get wrong today? Like, how am I going to get told off today? And yeah, it was a tough time. It was very tough. And towards the end of high school life, it was quite isolating. Like, I kind of disconnected with a lot of friends because, as I say, there's like this kind of like social development delay. And so where my friends kind of had matured in certain ways, I was still kind of, a year or two behind them. And that didn't really work very well in the friendship groups.
I don't know your family background and that, but how was it for parents with you being in trouble in school, with you being suspended, etc., etc.?
Yeah, a good question. I always tried to make sure that, so my mum and dad lived separately from the age of like 10. So I had kind of two homes, spent equal amount of time with each. I'd always try and make sure that school called my mum. Because
Go on, you got to tell me why. Yeah, just put it out there. Just put it out there.
With mum, it would be like you'd get a good shouting to, like good shouting at, kind of good talking to, and then that'd be it. It'd be forgotten about, and I could handle that. Like, I could handle it. But if it was dad that picked us up and then we got taken home, it was like, he would take his time, he'd reflect. So you'd be sat in silence for a while, and it's like the tension's building. You're like, this feeling of I'm disappointing my dad, and it was devastating. And the conversation would always be really calm and deliberate, and it'd be like, you'd just be sat there like, I cannot believe I've let you down. And it was just, it was, I can imagine from their view, as a parent now, I can imagine from their side, it was tough. And my mum, on my mum's side, she, having been diagnosed after I was, also is neurodivergent as well. So kind of dealing with her own struggles at the same time as being a young parent of a neurodivergent child, I can imagine was a very, very tough period.
Were you fearful of your dad? I know you were devastated if ever it come across that you let him down, but were you fearful?
I was, but not in the way that probably most people would understand that. I feared letting him down. I feared disappointment. I feared him being disappointed in me. That's what I feared more than anything. It wasn't that you were going to get a beating or anything like that. It was always like words and a beating. Sometimes,
it's easier to handle.
On the backside would have been easier to deal with. But yeah, it was that disappointment that I feared more than anything.
You said that your parents co-parented you. Was it just you, or did you have other siblings?
So I've got two brothers. So one's close to my age, he's 2 years younger, Mark. So we kind of went through we grew up together, close in age. And then I have a younger brother, Aaron, who is 14 years different. So when I was 14, Dad had been with somebody else for about 3-4 years. That's my stepmom, Jeannie. And then they had another baby. So yeah, two siblings, grown as an adult. But then when I was, for much of my youth, there was two of us.
Did you feel responsible for your siblings?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you balance that with in terms of your own stuff that you're going through?
It's interesting you say that. Was it last year? So we had a party for my brother Mark's birthday last November. So he's a November baby. And I kind of it's unlike me to give like a public speech in kind of like family circumstances. But I gave a little bit of a speech, and I talked about how throughout childhood that I was always there to protect him. Like I was his elder brother. And, anyone messed with him, I'd always make sure that it was dealt with and that he wasn't kind of like touched in school, and was always there to have an arm around his shoulder. And I was really proud of that. But what I said was that since becoming adults, like those roles have changed, and he's that person for me now. He's a person that when I'm struggling, puts an arm over my shoulder, is a listening ear, and he's there to protect me. And through my adult life, various periods of time where I've had really, really severe kind of mental health struggles. And I genuinely believe that I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him.
How was that role reversal for you? Did you embrace it? Did you accept it? Or did you push it away initially?
No, I've always, because of the dynamic of our relationship, like it never feels like one is serving the other. It's always just like, it's like we're going through this together. That's how it feels when we work together with things. And so I'm still there for him when he needs me now, but certainly I embrace, whenever I need to knock on his door and kind of, we go for a walk and I just talk through my struggles, and he's very good at just listening. And I think sometimes when we're on the receiving end, we sometimes are not quite sure what to offer, but it's just a listening ear that you need when you're in them difficult times. You don't necessarily need someone to give you the solutions to your problems. It's just someone to empathize with what you're going through.
Okay. So you leave school, you leave high school.
Yeah.
What then?
So left school, 16, just about managed to scrape like 5 GCSEs, which is what I needed to get into college. Okay. And I then started a BTEC in electrical engineering. Very quickly fell behind. Like I could not cope with the pace. I couldn't cope with it was the same as a school structure, kind of no support, constantly being told I wasn't good enough, the copy what's on the board, and I was always slow to process the words and never quite got down what was meant to be gotten down. And one day it was in November, so it was only 2 months after starting college. It was a friend of mine, Philip, who I remember very well from back then, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to the military recruitment office in Manchester. He's like, do you want to just join me for the ride?" So we jump on the bus and went in and had a conversation with the recruiter, and like I ended up applying on the day and went through a whole recruitment process. And 6 months later, I was in the Royal Air Force as a 17-year-old lad. So gone from a school environment where I hated the rules, hated the structure, hated being told what to do. And then
something more strict.
And then we're sat, kind of initiation training down at RAF Halton, going into one of the most extremely strict kind of environments that you could imagine.
How did you cope?
Emotionally, it was difficult being away from home. It was tough. It was intense. It was, 5 a.m. till 12 o'clock at night every day. But over the course of the 3 years I was in the RAF, it changed me into the person I am today. I never forget that the first 8 weeks is like initial training. So how to march, how to kind of like use a rifle, like really kind of fundamental stuff. And it was so tough. And at the end of those 8 weeks, I passed, and we had a pass out parade. So everyone's families came, sat in the stands. It was beautiful. It was August. It was 1999, and it was a beautiful day. And wearing my number one uniform, looking sharp, shiny shoes, carrying my rifle. We march together out, up and down, kind of around the marching square, the parade square. And I just remember being stood in the middle, kind of at attention, chin up, seeing my family in the stand. And it was like, that's the first moment in my life that I'd ever felt I'd achieved something real, like that I could be something. And like that feeling never left me. And I always wanted that. Like from that moment on, I'd never ever forgot it. And it completely changed my life. It changed the course of my life forever. And I have no idea where I would be now had I not made that decision to get on the bus and go to that recruitment center. Because life could have gone in many, many directions. And I think a lot of those could have been quite difficult, quite negative paths as well.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, what did it give you those 8 weeks?
I didn't realize at the time, on reflection, understanding my ADHD now, and also diagnosed with autism early on this year, it gave me structure and routine, which I absolutely thrive on. I can find it quite hard to implement with the ADHD, but when I implement it in a way that works for me, I absolutely thrive, and everything else comes together. So it was that implemented routine that without a doubt allowed me to be successful in that period.
You said you struggled initially being away from home and that you were there for 3 years.
Yeah.
How was it for your folks that you signed up?
Yeah.
Was it difficult conversations?
Yeah. So the conversation with my mum was a bit like, I could just see, she didn't say a lot in terms of her worries, but I could just see she was like terrified. I can imagine she was just seeing me on the front line of a war somewhere, and kind of like that was the panic. I told Dad, and I could see a kind of like sense of pride in his eyes, and he was really kind of like happy that I'd found something I wanted to do. Interestingly enough, and I only heard this story only just a few years ago, my mum and dad, they drove me to the RAF base for the first day together. And they dropped me off, and my dad was like beaming. He was dead proud, and mum had a few tears. And I got off and wandered off with my bags, and they left. And my mum said that as soon as he got off the camp, he pulled up on the side of the road and just couldn't cry. And he couldn't stop crying. And he just was like, I think it was the fact that I was moving away. And the fact that I guess he must have seen, I never got a chance to ask him because I found this out after he died. But yeah, he obviously seen his boy go off and kind of, on his journey to becoming a man. And it must have been quite emotional for him.
I'm sorry to hear that your father's passed away. That's opened up another can of questions, as it were.
Yeah.
But you were there for 3 years. Was there any part of it which you turned around and thought, I've made a mistake here? Or were you locked in?
Not so much I've made a mistake. There were points where I was like, this is so difficult. I just don't know if I can do it. And particularly those first couple of months, that would happen a lot. And I'd spent a lot of time on the phone to my mum. My mum was a real big support in that time. I must have spent a fortune on phone calls, like kind of just because there's a little like payphone down under the stairs. And I remember sitting in that little cubicle constantly and chatting to her when I had some free time. And yeah, she really got me through that time. And I used to get postcards from like aunties, and it was just, I had a lot of family support. But yeah, it was more not necessarily a mistake, because I always knew that I always felt I wanted to continue and wanted to do it. There were moments in those early days where I didn't know if I was able to, if I was capable.
What were the challenges then? I'm assuming that it wasn't the physical aspects of it. the PT side of things, you could manage
Yeah,
that?
no, I was quite unfit at that time. I'd say I was like quite overweight. I'd spent the 6 months leading up to that playing Championship Manager for 18 hours a day, eating junk food. So I wasn't in good condition. It was, the routine was like, you'd get up at 5 a.m, you'd shower, you'd have to like press all of your uniform, polish your boots. There'd be a whole kind of, the whole squadron would clean the whole kind of residential, and you're talking like polishing brass hinges, and then you'd have an inspection, and then there'd be like marching training all day, and this just went on and on, like 18 hours a day, sometimes more. And the times where I felt like that, where it broke me, was where I'd spent hours and hours getting things perfect and laying my uniform out on the bed for presentation, and like the crease wasn't quite sharp enough, or the front of the boot just wasn't quite shiny enough. And when I failed in those moments, it had such an impact on me. And that's like, I just really emotionally struggled to cope with those moments.
My question here is, with the military, people often get a sense or feel that there's a lot of bullying that goes on in there.
Yeah.
Did you experience that yourself, or did you witness it of others?
No.
And if somebody was looking to bully you, how would you have responded? You're smiling there.
Well, I suppose I'm kind of smiling because there's two answers to that. There's how would I respond to it with the person I am now, but then trying to remember how I would have responded back then, because I was very timid, very introverted, and kind of, yeah, really struggled to deal with that kind of conflict and those sort of situations. There wasn't, I didn't witness any bullying. There was camaraderie. There was that kind of, you know, I mean, there were 99% men on our squadron. There was that kind of boyish, like bullish behavior, like kind of, but we never crossed the line. How would I have dealt with it? Honestly, like if I'm being really honest, I probably would have shrunk and just hidden. I don't think I had the tools back then to deal with things like that in the right way.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Scariest moments whilst in?
Scariest. Scariest moment is being 2 hours across the Atlantic in a two-engined aircraft, and one of the engines started smoking and then cut out. And then they were like, did we carry on to Canada or did we turn back? So they cut one of the engines off, and then we flew back to the UK, to Bryce Norton, with one engine, with 50 kind of like very outwardly looking brave men who
I can imagine. What made you decide to leave?
I wanted to get out, and I wanted to get a degree. Like having that 3 years of success, kind of recognizing that I could really do something with my life here. Like I've got a lot of skills, I've got a lot of kind of competence, which I hadn't realized I had before. I wanted to get out and go to university, and to do that in the RAF as a non-commissioned kind of staff member, so you're not an officer, it is very, very difficult. Like you have to do it kind of distant learning. So basically you have to just study yourself on a laptop, and I can't learn that way. I need to be in front of somebody. So yeah, so I left and went to university. That was a kind of another turning point, really. Yeah. And
how was that for you?
I loved university.
What was it about university that you loved?
Yeah, not the obvious. I did love the obvious.
What's the obvious? What's the obvious?
My brother always jokes, like, because he didn't go to university, but he said he basically did, because whenever I got any money through like student loans, I'd be like, right, Mark, we're good to go. And we'd just be out every night until the money ran out. So I loved that side of it, loved the social side. Big music fan, so I loved it in Manchester as well. So like one of the best places for kind of like going out in the music scene. And so I loved that side of it. But and something I've discovered about myself in the last few years is that I absolutely love learning. If I'm in an environment where the topic is of interest and it's I've got the freedom to learn how I need to learn. I'm never in a better place. I could never thrive more than being in that environment, and I absolutely love it. And to this day, like I'll never stop learning.
That pursuit, that acquisition of knowledge, that's something that, yeah, okay, I get that. I really, really get that. So you qualified, you come out with a degree, yes?
Yeah, came out with a degree. So kind of did a four-year degree, and then came out with an engineering degree.
What path did you follow then?
Rolled straight into a job. I got a job as a electrical building services engineer, working for a company in Manchester. So that is kind of designing like electrical power, electrical fire, electrical lighting systems for kind of big buildings, so like schools, hospitals, that sort of thing. And did that with a company called Hully and Kirkwood for about 4 years, nearly 5 years. Enjoyed that time, enjoyed kind of, again, continuing to learn, like kind of thrived in terms of having senior engineers around me who I could absorb loads of information from. But after 4 or 5 years, I kind of was a bit like, do I want to do this forever? Is this what I really want to do? And I'd always had this niggling feeling that I'd like to teach people, because I was always great at, like you'd have new graduates would come in, new engineers, and I'd always kind of like help develop them, help mentor them. And so one day I just, out of nowhere, in typical ADHD impulsive fashion, just applied to be a teacher. And same again, 3 months later, I was sat in a lecture room in MMU, with my first day of teacher training.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask, just going back, you mentioned loving, studying, learning, acquiring knowledge. And you knew that you couldn't do it whilst in the Air Force, as it were.
Yeah.
But did you find the way that education was taught to you, did you find it completely different whilst at uni compared to being in school?
Yeah, it was a way I could immerse myself in it. I guess there was two parts to that really. In between school and university, I'd had 3 years of kind of developing a better understanding of myself, creating like an ability to develop, like to create routine and structure and kind of what you need to be able to put in the work. So I'd learned that in the 3 years that I'd kind of been out of education.
That was self-taught.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just from the experience of being in the military and the rigidity of life and kind of like developing like life skills. But then there's also the interest and the fascination in the topics. It's like, to most people, like if you're not kind of into your STEM stuff, it's going to sound like, it might sound really boring. But to me, learning how transformers work and learning the theory behind that was like, I just loved it. And you'd spend some time in a lab, stood around a transformer, breaking it and then fixing it, and then go to the classroom and learn about the theory in terms of how it's working and why, and the mathematics behind it. And that captured my imagination so intensely that I just absolutely loved the experience of going to classes, going to lectures.
Were you bitter about the way that school, primarily secondary school, their approach to education had impacted you in a negative sense?
Yeah, it was. And I think actually that probably formed part of the drive to becoming a teacher, is that I felt like there's a different way to do this. Like there's a different way to, the disruptive child, for example, like there's a different way to deal with that rather than just scream and shout and throw them out of a classroom.
Yeah, and chastise them. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, these kids and that kid who was me, they need someone to see them, like to kind of recognize what's going on inside, like, and to connect, to build some form of relationship with them. And that's what I did as a teacher. I was given like bottom set classes all the time, because I just used to click with these kids, and it was like, you've got kind of 20 low set kids who are all struggling, who are being disruptive, who, you know, are kind of like labeled as like the problem child. But I could connect with those because I was one of those. It's like,
Absolutely.
I'm only 10, 15 years older, but I was you back when, you know, at your age. And I just connect with them over where they live or what they like or what they do, or, you know, and I'd build a level of discipline through like a mutual respect, not demanding from them. And it was just, yeah, I think having that as my own personal experience, it did make me look back at the teaching era and, you know, in the 90s as being in high school and just kind of, it was such a detrimental environment for me to learning that, you know, I came away thinking I was stupid, which quite clearly, given what's happened since,
Absolutely.
I'm not.
Absolutely. Did you connect? I mean, you said you connected with the children themselves. Did you share your own life lived experiences?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did.
Because I think that's important.
Yeah, I did. And I kind of always like, I'd always do it in a way that was suitable, but I would kind of like push the boundaries in terms of, you know, like the typical way to demonstrate yourself as a teacher and how you meant to hold yourself and how you meant to speak to kids. I'd speak to them like we were out in the street. You know, I wouldn't chat from an authoritative perspective. It would be just a conversation of like, you know, because there'd be kids there that grew up around like the council estate in Withington where I grew up when I was in high school, like, and we'd chat about the streets, and I'd be like, you know, I lived on this road, and yeah, I lived on this road, and like, oh, like, do you go and play around here? Like, those are conversations that I think a lot of teachers even now are probably incapable of having with kids. So to have that connection, that kind of dynamic, I used it to my advantage.
What's your biggest success that you reflect on with the kids?
With the kids, so I tell you, it only happened. I've been out of teaching now for 8 years, and this actually happened about 2-3 months ago. So I go to my local barber, Arian's in Northenden, and the 3 guys, they all went to the school I taught at in Didsbury in Manchester. One of them was in my class, and 2 that I used to see around. And one of the barbers, one of the lads, called me Matthew, and one of the guy that's in the middle was like, whoa, 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 whoa. He's like, put some respect on his name. It's Mr. Menzies. And I laughed, but I was beaming with pride. It just kind of, it made me feel great. And I guess to answer the question is all the relationships that I built are my biggest successes and the impacts that had on some of the kids.
Absolutely. At the beginning, you mentioned about becoming a father and the challenges there and difficulties. You mentioned more recently being in dark spaces and that. And we're on the Hurt Locker. So we're just going to switch the attention to talk about mental health and its importance. I'm going to let you just begin wherever.
It's difficult to pick one time in particular or one kind of like point in time to talk about. I would say that time around before I was diagnosed with ADHD, the only way it's really hard to describe when you're in the depths of that kind of like dark place, feeling like it's impossible to kind of like clamber out, and sometimes feeling like emotionless in a way. And that's the pain. The pain is like not even really feeling anything, no joy, no sadness, no nothing. And I've been in that place so many times throughout my life. The last 4 or 5 years, a lot less so. I have had struggles, but a lot less so. Before being diagnosed, just had no understanding of myself. It was like, I say to people, it's like I had negative feelings and I had positive feelings. And that's as complex as I understood it. So when I felt bad, it was just, I had no idea why, no idea what was holding me down. And got to some really dark places on multiple occasions, kind of, considering, would I be better off, or would the world be better off without me here? Because this pain is so intense that I don't know what to do with it.
Okay, I'm going to push you a little bit, Matthew,
Yeah.
You're talking about pain.
Yeah.
Possible? Describe that. Or give me some variables that contributed to that pain.
I would say some of the darkest times were kind of like mid to late 20s, and there was like a breakup of a relationship. So kind of going through that feeling of being rejected from, to a person who already didn't feel good enough, didn't feel worthy.
Did you feel at the time when you were in the relationship that you were punching? Or did it feel equitable on the same level?
No, I'd say I felt like I was punching. Yeah, I didn't ever feel secure in that way. From day one, I always felt like, man, surely this can't last. Like, I've looked out here. And then was always, the relationship was for about 4 years. And on reflection, like that last 2 years, there were many, many periods where it was like, I should have known my self-worth and got out. But I never ever, and I was never brave enough, and could never reflect on myself in that way.
Were you pessimistic? Were you, I say pessimistic, but were you optimistic? Sorry. Made up that this relationship was happening.
Yeah.
And then in the latter 2 years, it was a case of, what does she see in me? Or am I worthy?
It was more, no, so the latter 2 years were more the connection wasn't reciprocated, and the commitment wasn't reciprocated. And rather than noticing that and realizing that, like, you're better than this, like you're worth more than this, I just clung on as long as I possibly could, because I was terrified of being alone, terrified of like, to the point where it's like, I will, after the breakup, I'd have times where it's like, I'm never going to meet anyone again. And I was 20, 26, 27 years old. Like,
and while you were a baby.
Yeah, exactly. But in that moment, that's what it felt like.
That's a spot on. In that moment.
Oh, yeah.
In that moment is so crucial.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so what come up for you? Was there a sense of self-loathing, or?
Yeah, there's self-loathing. There was not feeling good enough. There was like really like dark, deep levels of depression. Just feeling helpless. Because at that point, although I'd gone through some like low periods, that was the first time I'd gone through such a severe period of like depression. And so I didn't have any evidence in terms of like what happens next. Like all I knew was what I was in. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, remember when this happened last time and I got out of it. Like it was all fresh. It was all new to me. So it was terrifying.
It was raw. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because there was nothing to measure it against, it's the be all and end all, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Was this the first time you contemplated suicide?
Yeah, it was. And it was a couple of occasions, and there was never any kind of like planning or deliberate kind of intention to do it. But like, I'd be driving down the motorway in the fast lane and like just crying and just looking at the barrier thinking like, could just end this pain now. Like, could all be over. And it's terrifying. Like, it's really looking back.
Yeah.
Terrifying like that, to even to consider that as an option is it's really scary, really, really scary. Because I always wonder, like, what's the difference between that and what comes next? Like, it's like,
Yes.
yeah,
It's a blink.
yeah. There's
a blink.
yeah, you just, oh man, so scary, so scary.
How did you get through?
As soon as you said that, it came to me. I discovered Muay Thai. I discovered Thai boxing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did that come from?
It just, as soon as you said it, I just knew straight away, like, just kind of clicked. And I remember one weekend, and this was around that time, like that dark time. And it'd been quite a few months of being in that situation, like in that dark place. And I had nothing to do at the weekend. It was probably one of the weekends where, like, I blown all my money the first week or two after payday, and like just had nothing. And so I went on my laptop, and I was like, I need something. I don't know what it is. I just need to do something with my, like, that is not what I'm doing now. And somehow I found this Thai boxing gym called Silapa Muay Thai. And it was a trek from where I lived. I lived in Gorton at the time. I was staying with my mum, and the gym was in Eccles, like Salford way in Manchester. So it was a good, like, 30-minute drive away. And the first class was on the Tuesday. So messaged the guy, yeah, just come down, and getting there for the first time. It's just a little church hall, and chatting to a guy called Mark. Yeah, just felt at home. And first training session, kicking some pads, punching some pads, the camaraderie of the group together, they embraced me as a new kind of member of the group.
Did you feel that connection?
Straight away, yeah, straight away. And it's the first time I think I'd kind of felt that in that sort of kind of group situation. Kicking and punching things, like, releases something from your body, even if you're just kicking a pad. It's like it just releases tension every time you do it. Releases anger, releases aggression, releases, like, kind of hatred, releases all these negative feelings. And I was just hooked from day one. Never missed a class for years. I just absolutely, like, just delved straight into it, and just became a real kind of, like, hyper focus.
That was your protective factor.
Okay.
That was your protective factor.
Mm.
That sense of connection.
Mm.
Not only with yourself, with others. You mentioned you were in that dark period for quite some time. Mm. Did anybody notice? Did anybody say to you, Matthew, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have a close family who I know that I will never, ever be alone, no matter what happens. And even, before having kids, and kind of like before the life I have now, but I just knew I would never be alone. I had my brother, I had my mom, I had my dad, I had my my stepdad and stepmom on the other sides as well. And I always had someone that I could turn to. And my dad was usually that person. He was, like, the number one person I would turn to. And my dad always knew what I needed in the moment. So, like, he knew if I just needed to sit in the same room as him and not talk, and that's what I would do, and that's what I'd get. Or he knew if we needed to go for a walk and chat. Like, just kind of, I've been so lucky, and I'm so lucky to have people that look out for me in that way, and we know each other so well that we recognize small changes in each other, and just like, you're okay, like, and yeah, but are you sure? Are you okay? And that is just so important to have that in your life.
100%. And Matthew, I've got to say this: you're blessed and you're lucky, because all the conversations that I have, not many people have. That structure, that support, that family bond that you've had, that you've shared with our listeners today.
Yeah.
And on hearts, I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really acknowledge that. Doesn't ever pass me by. I'm so aware. And even only a few days ago, had this conversation over message with my brother because he checked in because I'd kind of not been feeling myself. And I mentioned, like, you know, I'd feel so lucky because I know that there's not many people out there that have this in their life, that have that kind of person that they can always turn to. There's so many people out there that just either don't have the person to talk to or aren't able to get out what they're feeling and to express what they're feeling. So I feel very lucky.
I mean, you've spoken more recent times about struggling, being in, you know, dark places and that. Have you done therapy? How did you find that? How did you take to that?
Yeah, I've found it lots of different times, and each time I've needed it for a slightly different reason. I've always really embraced it. I've always really kind of I've always learned something about myself each time, something new. And I've tried, you know, like kind of like traditional therapy, CBT, like EMDR, like lots of kind of different things for different reasons. And I'm always a big advocate, and I'm always really open with people as well. Like, you know, wherever the topic comes up, I think it's important to share and be open about it, because again, and I feel like I'm constantly being saved, but like therapy as well as kind of has saved me from some really dark places over the years. Sometimes even that moment of reaching out for help straight away, like there's something that lifts, that it's like, okay, I'm not alone in this struggle now. Like,
just through the act of reaching out itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so important. You might not have even had any conversations yet, but like something's coming, and it just kind of like you takes you from that position of kind of feeling like you don't, like there's no way out, to actually there's an avenue here that I can explore, and there's a way that I might be able to resolve this and kind of come away from the struggle.
Long may you continue to reach out. Can I ask, who's the most important person in your life? You can only pick one person.
So the most important person in my life is, the most impactful person, I would say, is my son. I have two children, Lucas and Mia. That's beautiful children. The reason that the youngest is so impactful is becoming a father, and the change that had. All of a sudden, this little human being who you have to kind of like care for and be responsible for and protect, and him being a boy, it's like, you know, it's going to be my job to demonstrate or to show what a man is meant to look like, and what kind of qualities a man is meant to have. Lead by example. That shifted my whole mindset. It changed my life completely. And, you know, I want to be the best father I can be to my kids. I want to kind of lead the way for them. I want to give them a stable and happy life, and giving that to them will leave me feeling fulfilled, you know, to my final days.
Okay. But you still haven't answered the question. You said impactful.
Yeah.
Who's the most important person in your life?
In order to do that, that person has to be me.
Do you believe that?
I do.
Do you embrace it 100%?
I go through stages, and just recently, you know, I've gone through a stage where I'd forgotten. So this is quite fresh for me, this topic. Okay. I'd gone through a stage where I'd completely forgotten to prioritize myself, to take care of myself, and got to the point where I just had nothing left. And so had to recognize that, you know, this whole kind of like oxygen mask scenario. So like, put your own on before you look after those around you.
100%.
And you sometimes you have to go through a struggle to kind of remind yourself of how important that is. Yeah.
Let me say this. You're the most important person in your life because you're the expert of you. You know what makes yourself happy. You know what makes yourself sad. And only by attending to your needs, first and foremost, can you be there for the people who are key, who are important, who are integral in your life.
Mm.
And imagine this. Imagine if you took care of business for you. Imagine how much more richer and textured and layered that love and care would be for those important people in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
But it begins, it ends with you.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
Just coming to the end soon, but I just wanted a couple of things. And I want to just thank you for your openness. It's been really powerful. You know, I haven't, for a short while, I haven't gone to the level, the way that you've explained things, the way that you've talked about things. And I think it's important for us as men that we have those conversations. We have those honest conversations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm just curious. You said your mum's going through the process, or she's gone through the process.
Yeah, in the last couple of years.
How was it for her? And then how in turn did that affect the relationship with you? Given the fact that you've already gone through it. Was there any epiphany moment, as it were, for her?
I'm not sure in terms of an epiphany. I think as I explored my own ADHD and in typical fashion went and learned as much as I possibly could about it. So kind of like became an expert so that I could try and understand myself. And I've been very vocal over the last few years about what I've learned and kind of shared with family and shared through kind of like social media. And so my family have been on a learning journey with me. And so whereas 5 years ago, there was one ADHD member of the family, it seems now like everybody. Exactly. But yeah, I think two things. I think how it impacted her, and I know the major thing that has happened is she's reflected on her parenthood, particularly when we were younger, and the struggles and how has a lot of regrets. She was a young mum, often alone, with undiagnosed ADHD and possibly autism as well. And she punishes herself too much for those moments, even now. Like I think she's come to peace with a lot of it, but I think she still punishes herself too much for it. In terms of our bond, the last few years we've become closer than I think we've ever been. And I think part of that is having young children, but part of it is we both understand each other and ourselves so much more than we ever have. And that's allowed us to connect in a different way.
And as you were saying that, I just felt such a honesty that's developed between you both as well, in terms of that bond, that insight, that understanding. Without apportioning blame.
Absolutely.
My last question for you is this. The hurt lock is finished. You switch it off. You go and give your kids a hug, this, that, and the other. There's a knock at the door. And there's 9-year-old Matthew standing there. What do you say?
I'd say you're going to have some amazing days. You're going to have some dark days, some struggles. But just know when you're in that dark, horrible place and you feel like there's no way out, that every single time you're going to come through. And every single time you're going to learn a little bit more about yourself. You're going to become a bit stronger, a bit more resilient, and build the tools that you need to thrive in life.
Thank you. Do me a favor. Just give him a hug now. Close your eyes and just give him a hug now. Matthew, you've been on the Hurt Locker. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Yinka. Appreciate it.
The Hurt Locker is a safe space for our guests to openly share their mental health experiences. If you have been affected by any of the content in this recording, then please reach out for support. If it is an emergency, dial 999. If you would like to talk to somebody today, then please call the Samaritans on 116 123. Stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Hurt Locker. Please give us a rating or share with another listener. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Hurt Locker Pod.